My jealous sister set fire to my new house, but you should have seen her face when she found out that my husband and I had bought it for her family, and her life was ruined after that. The smell of smoke and ash stays with you forever. This bitter mixture of loss, fear, and helplessness sticks in your nostrils, seeps into your clothes, and settles on your skin. It becomes a part of you, reminding you that everything you have can disappear in an instant. I was standing in front of what was our new home yesterday. Now there are blackened walls, charred wood, and broken windows. Water from fire hoses turned the ground around into a muddy swamp. 3 firefighters in heavy equipment were still walking around the area, checking to see if there was any heat left. Neighbors watched from behind their yard fences, some with outright curiosity, others with feigned sympathy. "Mrs. Larson!" The fire chief's voice snapped me out of my daze. "We need to talk." His face looked far too serious for the usual professional sympathy. Something was wrong. Something worse than just a burned-out house. "We have reason to believe that the fire was deliberate," he said, looking me straight in the eye. "We found traces of flammable liquid near the back door and on the veranda. A classic arson scheme." The world around me shook. Deliberate? Who would do that? "No, it's some kind of mistake." "It's impossible," I whispered. "We just finished the last repairs yesterday. The furniture hasn't even been delivered yet. Who would—" My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling to a halt on the side of the road. "Ethan!" My husband jumped out of the car without turning off the engine and ran to me. His normally calm face was distorted with panic. "Oh my God, are you okay?" He grabbed my shoulders, looking me up and down as if to check if I was hurt. "What happened?" Before I could answer, a man in a civilian suit approached us, showing us his police badge. "Detective Reynolds, arson investigation," he introduced himself. "Mr. and Mrs. Larson, I need to ask you a few questions." "Arson?" "Are you sure?" Ethan put his arm around my shoulders, as if to protect me. "The neighboring house's surveillance cameras captured a man entering your property around 3 a.m. The quality of the recording is not the best, but we are already working on identification." I felt a cold fear crawl down my spine. Someone had come here in the middle of the night with the sole purpose of destroying our home. "Do you have any enemies, Mrs. Larson? Business competitors, perhaps? Anyone who might wish you harm?" I shook my head. My bakery chain was successful, but not successful enough to inspire such hatred. All the conflicts we had were resolved in a civilized manner, through court or negotiation. "What about the video?" Ethan asked. The detective hesitated, but then pulled the tablet out of his bag. "We don't usually show evidence at the scene, but since it might help identify the arsonist." He turned the screen toward us. The dark, grainy video showed a hooded figure sneaking around the back of our house. The person was carrying what looked like a canister. You couldn't see his face, but something about his posture, his gait. Ethan tensed up next to me. "Can you rewind to the moment when the person gets back to the car?" he asked in a tense voice. The detective fast-forwarded the tape. Now the figure was running away from the house, the hood flying up, and for a moment I could see— "Oh my God!" I exhaled, feeling my legs give out. "That's my sister." Detective Reynolds jerked his head up, looking from the screen to me. I nodded, unable to say a word. "Adeline Cortez," he said to the detective, "my wife's sister." I mechanically dictated Adeline's address, feeling like a traitor. But what else could I do? She set fire to our house. "We'll send a patrol over there," the detective said, taking notes. "And you should go home and get some rest. Leave your contact number. We'll contact you when we have news." "Home," I repeated bitterly. "We don't have a home anymore." "We have an apartment, honey," Ethan reminded me gently. The detective had already left, talking on his radio. Ethan and I walked slowly to his car. I looked back at the blackened ruins one last time. Only yesterday we were standing here, planning where we would put the children's swing for our nephews, where we would plant flowers. In the car, I finally burst into tears. "She didn't know," I finally whispered. "Adeline didn't know we bought this house for her." "She didn't." Ethan agreed, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. But that doesn't explain why she set it on fire. We should have told her sooner. And what difference would that have made? He asked sharply, but then softened his tone. It's crazy. Why would you burn down someone else's house? Even if she thought it was our house, how can you? It's a criminal offense. I started crying again, quieter this time. Adeline, my little sister. We were certainly not a perfect family. There were quarrels, misunderstandings. But this? Tomorrow was supposed to be a surprise, I said, wiping away my tears. We were going to show her the house, give her the keys. Have you seen how they live now, in that rented hut with mold and a leaky roof? The kids are constantly sick, and Dexter lost his job again. I just wanted to help. I know, honey. Ethan squeezed my hand. You're always looking out for everyone, especially Adeline. His voice turned bitter on the last word. He never really liked my sister, though he tried to be nice for my sake. He said she was taking advantage of me. Megan, Ethan said seriously, we have to talk about this. What are you going to do? What are you talking about? The police will arrest her. They're going to charge her with arson, criminal charges. Are you ready to testify against your own sister? I put my hands over my face. No, I wasn't ready. But how could I defend a person who had done such a thing? Stay it! Let's talk to her first, Ethan suggested, seeing my anguish. Find out why she did it. And then we'll decide. My phone rang. It was the police station. Mrs. Larson? Detective Reynolds. We've got your sister in custody on suspicion of arson. She confessed. I sat there, frozen, listening to his words. She'd like to see you. Can you come to the police station? I glanced at Ethan, who was watching me intently. Yes, I said. We're on our way. The police station was a gray, nondescript building. It smelled of coffee and disinfectant inside. Detective Reynolds met us in the hallway. She's in the interrogation room, he said. Officially, I can't allow a private conversation, but I can give you 15 minutes alone if you promise not to discuss the details of the crime. Thank you, I said. I'll wait here. Ethan squeezed my hand. You need to talk to her face to face. When I entered the room, Adeline looked up. Her always flawless makeup was smudged, her dark hair disheveled. She looked small and broken behind the metal desk. Maggie, she whispered, using my childhood nickname. I'm so sorry. I sat down across from her, feeling my insides boiling. Why, Addie? I asked. She looked down at her cuffed hands. I didn't mean to. I did, but… She trailed off. I was drunk. And angry. I heard from a mutual friend that you and Ethan had bought a fancy new house, and Dexter and I are facing eviction because we can't pay the rent again. The kids are sleeping in a room with mold on the walls, and you… Her voice broke. I just broke down. Is that why you decided to burn down our house? I asked, feeling my anger mingling with pity. Adeline nodded, tears streaming down her face. It was an impulse. A stupid, horrible impulse. I drank almost a whole bottle of wine. Dexter came home late again. I got in my car and drove to your new house. I just wanted to see if I could break a window or something, but there was a can of lawnmower gas in the trunk, and She covered her face with her hands. I hated myself every second of it, but I couldn't stop. All that envy and anger, it was like they were out of control. I looked at her, feeling a cold emptiness inside. My own sister. The person with whom we grew up together, shared secrets, dreams, laughter, and tears. And she hated me enough to do this. I never thought you hated me that much, I said quietly. So, I don't hate you, Maggie, Adeline sobbed. I hate my life. The way it's turned out. You were always the more successful, the happier. You have no idea what you've done, I interrupted her. Adeline froze, staring at me with wide eyes. What? After Christmas, when you told me about the problems with the rent, Ethan and I started looking for options. We found this house 3 bedrooms, a nice yard for the kids, close to a good school. We made a down payment, took out a mortgage for ourselves, but planned to hand it over to you. Tomorrow was supposed to be a surprise. I took out the envelope I had been carrying around for the past few days. Adeline took the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it, took out the documents, and ran her eyes over the lines that clearly indicated the address. The same address where she had set the fire yesterday. Her face was distorted with horror and understanding. "Oh my God!" she whispered, putting her hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, no!" I saw her world crumble in that moment. I saw her realize that she had destroyed her own future, her children's future, all because of a momentary flash of jealousy. "But you did," I said harshly. "Without knowing the whole story, you were willing to destroy our home. What does that say about you? What does it say about us?" Adeline was sobbing now, unable to contain herself, rocking back and forth in her chair. "Please give me a chance. I'll work for every penny." I stood up. I needed to think. My heart was breaking with pain, but also with the realization of how far this sisterly rivalry had gone. How many years I had turned a blind eye to the jealousy and resentment that had been building up between us. "The police want to know if I'm pressing charges," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need time to decide. Maggie, please." Adeline reached out to me, but I stepped back to the door. "I'll contact your lawyer," I said. "I'll make sure the kids are safe. But I need time, Addie. Just give me time." I left the room, feeling my knees shaking. Ethan was waiting in the hallway, talking to the detective. "I showed her the deed to the house," I said, feeling the tears come back to my throat. "She really didn't know." "Of course she didn't," Ethan said, "but that doesn't excuse what she did." "What do I do, Ethan?" I asked, looking at him with a confused look. "But how can I just forgive her?" Detective Reynolds coughed gently, getting our attention. "Mrs. Larson, we need to know your decision on the charges. Arson is a serious crime, but if you, as the victim, don't want to prosecute—" I glanced at the door of the interrogation room, where my sister sat, broken, scared, but still. My sister. Then I looked to Ethan for support. "What would you do in my place?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, honey. It's your sister. It's your decision. I'll support whatever you choose." I closed my eyes, trying to collect my thoughts. Images floated through my mind's eye. Adeline and I as children playing in the garden. Our last fight. The blackened walls of the house that was to become her new home. The frightened faces of my nephews, Liam and Corey, if their mother ended up in prison. "I want to talk to her lawyer," I finally told the detective, "before I make a final decision." He nodded, understanding. "Of course. Tomorrow, our officer will come to your house to take a formal statement. Until then, your sister will remain in custody." Ethan and I left the police station. It was evening, and the wind was blowing the first autumn leaves. I felt devastated, as if everything that made me me had been burned away, leaving only a shell. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her," I told Ethan as we got into the car. "No one is asking you to forgive her immediately," he replied, taking my hand. "But Megan, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? This whole thing with Adeline." I nodded, feeling the bitter truth come back as a pain in my chest. For years, I had turned a blind eye to the growing gap between my sister and me. I attributed her harsh comments, attacks, and envious glances to fatigue, stress, and temporary difficulties. But the truth was that Adeline had long since stopped seeing me as a sister. I had become for her a symbol of all that she could not achieve, a constant reminder of her failures. "Let's go home," I whispered. "Tomorrow is a new day, and we'll have to make a decision." Ethan started the car, and we drove away from the police station, where my sister was left alone with what she had done. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. But one thing I knew for sure was that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I couldn't sleep. We went back to our apartment in the city center, a small but cozy one that we had kept for ourselves when we bought the house for Adeline. Ethan fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the emotional day, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about how my sister and I had gotten to this point. My memories went back to my childhood, when everything seemed simpler. Adeline was born when I was 3 years old. My mom often told me how when I saw my little sister, I announced that I would take care of her from now on. And I kept that promise. I defended her at school, helped her with her homework, shared everything I had. We grew up in the small town of Oakwood, where our parents owned a small bakery called the Sweet Basket. My dad would get up early to knead the dough, and my mom would work behind the counter. The smell of fresh baked goods became the scent of our childhood. In the summer, we would help out in the bakery. Me, usually with the dough, Adeline with the customers, because even then she could charm people with her smile. Megan is my reliable assistant, my dad said, tasting my first self-baked cookie. And Adeline is a real sales star. You should have seen her convince Mrs. Johnson to buy 3 cakes for the school bake sale. So, unnoticed, the comparison began. I am reliable, responsible, and diligent. Adeline is bright, charming, sociable. My parents probably did not even notice how their seemingly innocent comments gradually created an invisible wall between us. At school, the difference between us became even more obvious. I was an excellent student, president of the science club, and played the piano. Adeline often skipped classes, but she was the life of the party, invited to all the parties. She had a natural beauty that attracted attention, especially from boys. Her dark, shiny hair and green eyes contrasted with my more reserved appearance. Why can't you be more responsible like your sister? Adeline's father would scold her when she got another bad grade. Megan, why don't you go out and have fun with your friends like Adeline? You can't sit over books all the time, my mom would sigh when she found me doing my homework on a Saturday night. I remember one evening when I was 16 and Adeline was 13. We sat on the roof of our house looking at the stars, one of the few traditions we had left together. I wish I was as smart as you, Maggie, Adeline suddenly said, wrapping her arms around her knees. Then Mom and Dad wouldn't be so disappointed. Don't be silly, I replied. You're much cooler than me. You have a lot of friends. You're beautiful. All the guys are crazy about you. But that's not what really matters, she sighed. I don't even know if I'm going to graduate. Of course you will. I'll help you with your studies. We'll study together. She looked at me with her big green eyes, and for a moment I saw real gratitude in them. But then she shrugged her shoulders and turned away. Why bother? I will never be as perfect as you anyway. I wanted to argue, to say that I was not perfect at all, that I also make mistakes, but the words stuck in my throat. For some reason, I didn't think she would believe me. When I entered college with a full scholarship, my parents threw a party. Adeline, who was 15 at the time, was standing in the corner with a gloomy expression. I found her in the backyard, where she was sneaking a cigarette, a new bad habit. Don't you want to join the celebration? I asked. Why? She replied bitterly. It's your party, your triumph. I'm just a decoration. Addie, don't say that. It's not true. She exhaled smoke. You know what Aunt Carol said? Oh, Adeline, you're probably going to college like Megan too, aren't you? And when I told her that maybe I wouldn't, she looked at me like I was some kind of misunderstanding. Everyone expects me to be like you. And if I can't be like you, then I'm just nobody. You're not nobody. I tried to hug her, but she pulled away. You always get everything right. After that, the gap between us only widened. I went away to college, and when I came home for the holidays, Adeline always found a reason to be somewhere else. She dropped out of school in her last year, which was a real blow to our parents. I tried to talk to her, but I ran into a wall of sarcasm and hostility. Life put us on different trajectories. I graduated from college, returned home, and started working in the family bakery, gradually modernizing the business. Adeline met Dexter Cortez at a party, a tall, handsome guy with a charming smile and a complete lack of ambition. They married when she was only 20, against our parents' wishes. And then, when I was 25 and Adeline was 22, a tragedy happened that changed our lives forever. Our parents were killed in a car accident. We stood side by side at the funeral, but grief did not bring us closer. It seemed to only increase our estrangement. After my parents died, there was a will. I got the bakery, and Adeline got a monetary share equivalent to the value of the business. I remember the lawyer explaining, "Your parents believed that Megan was more suited to running the business, and Adeline would have the financial freedom to implement her own plans." Adeline didn't say anything at the time, but her eyes sparkled. We didn't discuss the will, each focusing on her own grief and legacy. It was then that I reconnected with Ethan Larson, my high school friend. He had returned to Oakwood after working for a marketing firm in the big city and offered to help me develop the bakery. With his experience and my culinary skills, we gradually turned Sweet Basket into a coffee shop bakery chain called Larson Bakery. Our partnership grew into love, and 2 years later, we got married. Adeline and Dexter, meanwhile, quickly spent her inheritance. First, it was a luxury apartment, then expensive cars, exotic travel. Dexter was constantly starting new, promising projects that never made a profit. When their son Liam was born, Adeline became more serious for a while and found a job as an office manager. But Dexter couldn't stay in one place for long. He worked as a bartender, a car salesman, a realtor, and never worked for more than a year. Our meetings became rare and tense. Every time Adeline saw my new car or heard about the opening of another Larson and Baker branch, her eyes would darken. She refused to accept any help from me, even when she was clearly in a difficult situation. The only thing she would allow was gifts for the children, especially after the birth of her daughter, Cora. "I don't need your charity," she said once when I offered to borrow money for rent. "We can manage on our own." "This isn't charity, Addie," I replied. "Right," she nodded sarcastically. "A big, happy family, where you're the savior, as always, and I'm the loser who needs saving." I tried to ignore her harshness, putting it down to stress and financial difficulties. But with each meeting, it became more and more obvious that Adeline did not see me as a sister, but as the embodiment of everything she had failed to achieve. The relationship between our husbands was no better. Ethan, pragmatic and organized, did not hide his disapproval of Dexter's irresponsible lifestyle. And Dexter, for his part, called Ethan a bore and a corporate robot. "I don't know how you put up with that guy," Dexter told me at one of the family barbecues. "Where's the passion?" "Not everyone needs a roller coaster ride in a relationship, Dexter," I replied dryly. "Some of us value stability and mutual respect." He laughed, but his eyes flashed with resentment. Despite all the difficulties, I continued to try to keep in touch with my nephews. Liam, a serious boy beyond his years, inherited my love of books and science. Cora was more like her mother, lively, artistic, with a personality. I saw how difficult their lives were, how they had to constantly adapt to new schools and neighbors because their parents could not stay in one place for long. Last year, after Dexter's dismissal, they moved to a small rented house on the outskirts of the city. It was an old building with a leaky roof and bad wiring. The first time I visited, I was shocked to see mold spots on the walls of the children's room. "Addie, it's not safe for children," I said, trying to sound calm. "Do you think I don't know that?" She grabbed a napkin and began to nervously wipe the stain, although it didn't help. "Do you think I like living in this hovel? But it's all we can afford right now." "I can help. Ethan and I—" "No!" She turned to me sharply. "Every time you offer to help, I feel like a bigger failure. Why can't you just leave us alone?" I stepped back, feeling my heart clench painfully. "I just want to help, Addie." "You're my sister." "I know." She slumped her shoulders, suddenly looking terribly tired. "But sometimes that just makes it worse. Seeing how well you've done and comparing it to my life, it's like constantly looking in a mirror that shows you everything you could have been, but didn't become." This conversation left a deep mark on me. I started visiting them less often, trying not to put pressure, not to remind Adeline of the difference in our lives. But I did not stop worrying about my nephews. Last Christmas, we invited them to our house for dinner. I tried to do everything perfectly. I decorated the house, cooked the children's favorite dishes, bought gifts. It was the first time in a long time that we got together, and at first, everything went well. The kids were thrilled with the gifts. Dexter relaxed after a few glasses of wine. Even Adeline seemed less stressed. But after dinner, when Ethan had gone to put the kids to bed in the guest room and Dexter had dozed off on the couch, Adeline and I were alone in the kitchen. "Thanks for dinner," she said as she helped me put the dishes in the dishwasher. "It was really good." "You're welcome," I replied, glad to have this rare moment of peace between us. She nodded, and for a moment there was silence, broken only by the clinking of dishes. And then she suddenly cried, quietly, without sobbing, just tears streaming down her face. "Addie?" I went to her, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "We're being evicted," she whispered, not looking at me. "We owe 3 months' rent, and the landlord doesn't want to wait any longer." "Oh, Addie." "I don't know what to do." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Dexter lost his job again. Liam is always sick because of this damn mold. I can't work full-time because I have to pick Cora up from school, and I can't afford a babysitter. Sometimes I think we'll never get out of this hole." I hugged her, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. We stood there for a few minutes while she cried into my shoulder. "It's going to be okay," I said, although I didn't know how. "We'll figure something out." "It's always you," she smiled bitterly, pulling away. "And I'm always the one who needs saving." After they left, Ethan and I had a long talk. I told him about Adeline's situation, about the eviction, about Liam's illness. "We could give them money for rent," Ethan suggested, though I could tell he wasn't enthusiastic about the idea. "She won't accept it," I sighed. "You know Adeline." "Her pride won't allow it." "Then what do you suggest?" I thought of an empty house 3 blocks away, small but cozy, with a garden where the kids could play. It had been on the market for a few months, and the price was quite reasonable. "What if we bought a house for them?" I said slowly. "Not as an outright gift, but as if creating an opportunity. We could say it was an investment, that they could pay us back gradually as they got back on their feet." Ethan thought about it. "It's a lot of money, Megan," he said carefully, "and I'm not sure Dexter will ever get back on his feet." "Please, Ethan." I took his hand. "They're family. My sister, my nephews. I can't just watch them end up on the street." He sighed, but I could tell he was already agreeing. "Okay, but let's at least find something that won't ruin us if they can't pay." The next day, we went to look at a house 3 blocks away. It was older than ours, in need of repairs, but it had 3 bedrooms, a nice yard, and, most importantly, it was located in a neighborhood with a good school. We made an offer, which was quickly accepted, and spent the next few weeks spending every free minute there, painting the walls, changing the plumbing, repairing the roof. It was supposed to be a surprise. We planned to show the house to Adeline and her family after all the work was completed, handing over the keys and documents on terms she could accept without hurting her pride. Maybe a lease with the right to buy, or a loan with a minimum interest. I wanted so much to see the look on her face when she walked into that house and realized that it could be her home. I imagined Liam and Cora choosing their rooms, planting flowers in the yard together, gradually bringing stability back into their lives. But instead, I stood in front of the ashes, watching everything we had built with so much love and hope turn into black ruins. And worst of all, it was my own sister who did it, the person for whom this house was meant. Isn't it ironic? Or maybe some dark symbol of our entire relationship. Everything I tried to give her, she destroyed with her own hands without knowing it. The next morning, Ethan found me in the kitchen, mechanically stirring the coffee that had long since cooled. I hadn't slept all night, replaying last night's events in my head, trying to figure out how we had gotten to this point. Megan. Ethan touched my shoulder gently. Detective Reynolds called. They're waiting for your decision on the charges. I looked up at him, tired. What would you do if you were me? Ethan sighed as he poured himself a cup of coffee. To be honest, I wouldn't hesitate. Arson is a serious crime. Adeline could have not only destroyed property, but also harmed people. What if someone had been in the house? What if the neighbors had been hurt? I knew he was right, but the thought of my sister going to jail was unbearable. But it was Addie, I whispered. She's my sister, no matter what. Who set the fire, Megan? This isn't just an argument or a hurtful word. This is a felony. I pushed my cup away and stood up. I need to talk to her. One more time, before I make a decision. Ethan nodded, though I could see the doubt in his eyes. I'll take you to the police station. The police station seemed even more gloomy in the morning light. When I was shown to the visitor's room, I was struck by how Adeline had changed overnight. Her usually immaculately styled hair was tousled. Her eyes were red, and dark circles lay beneath them. Her lipstick, which she never forgot to put on, even in the most difficult times, was worn off, and her lips were chapped. She looked smaller, broken. Maggie, she whispered as I sat down across from her. You came. Yes. I tried to keep my voice steady, not to show how much I was shaken by her appearance. Why did you do it, Addie? Why did you set the house on fire? She looked down at her hands, which were intertwined on the table. I was so angry. And drunk. Dexter and I had gotten into a fight. He came home late, smelling like another woman's perfume again. When I started to argue, he said, her voice trembled, he said that I should look at your life and understand why men don't want to stay with me. That I'm a failure, and I've always been a failure, unlike my successful sister. I felt my heart clench. I drank almost an entire bottle of wine, she continued quietly. And suddenly, I remembered Tessa Williams telling me about your new luxurious home. How you plan to have a swimming pool and a tennis court there, whereas my children and I live in a damp place where Liam can't breathe properly. And I just broke down. I didn't understand what kind of tennis court she was talking about. We had never planned it. But city gossip is often exaggerated. Is that why you decided to burn down our house? Not jealousy, she answered, finally looking up, her eyes green and glistening with tears. I just wanted to… I don't know. Maybe to feel that, for once, I could do something, change something, even if it's to destroy someone else's happiness. And how did you feel afterwards? When you saw the flames? She shuddered. Terrible. I hated myself. I cried all the way home and thought about turning myself in to the police. But then I got scared. The children. What would happen to the children? She put her hands over her face, her shoulders shaking. I didn't know this was a home for us, Maggie. I swear, I would never… But you knew it was someone's house. I interrupted her. You knew you were destroying someone else's property, maybe someone's dreams, and yet you did it anyway. Adeline lowered her hands, nodding. Yes, I did it, and I deserve to be punished. The police are waiting for my decision, I said. Her eyes widened, a glimmer of hope in them. You can not press charges? I can, I said. But first, I want you to fully understand what you did. I took out the folder with the documents I had shown her yesterday. Now, more calmly, I laid out all the papers in front of her, the purchase agreement, the insurance, the house plans. We bought this house 2 months ago, I began, pointing to the date on the contract. We saw the ad and immediately realized that it was perfect for you. There are 3 bedrooms, one for you and Dexter, one for Liam and Cora. The backyard overlooks a park, and Cora's school is within walking distance, and most importantly, no mold. Adeline was studying the documents, and I could see it gradually dawning on her. She began to tremble. We finished the renovation last week, I continued. We repainted all the rooms. Liam's is blue because I know it's his favorite color. Corey's is yellow with lilac butterflies on the wall. We replaced all the plumbing and installed a new heating system. But why? She whispered. Because you're a family, I said simply. And I burned it all down? Her voice broke. Yes, I confirmed. You destroyed the home we made for you. Adeline made a sound like a wounded animal whimpering and fell face first onto the table, shaking her whole body. I sat in silence, letting her process this moment, to realize the magnitude of what she had done. I'm not going to press charges, I said when she calmed down a bit. The police will release you on bail. Ethan has already arranged for a lawyer. She looked up at me, devastated. Why? After everything I've done. Because you're still my sister, I replied. And I don't want Liam and Cora to see their mother in jail. What about us? She asked quietly. I gathered my papers and stood up. I don't know, Addie. The insurance will cover the damage, but it will take time to rebuild. Really? I'm not sure I can trust you again. I need time. Give me some space. I watched her last hopes crumble, but I couldn't offer anything else. Not now, when the wound was so fresh. What do I tell the children? She whispered. The truth, I replied. They deserve to know. I left her there, still broken and crying, and went out into the hallway where Ethan was waiting for me. How did it go? He asked, hugging me. Terrible, I replied. We went to the lawyer's office, where we signed the necessary papers to release Adeline on bail without criminal charges. In exchange, she was to pay damages through a civil suit and undergo psychotherapy. That's very generous of you, said the lawyer, an elderly man with kind eyes. Not everyone is capable of such forgiveness. It's not forgiveness, I replied. It's just a deferred sentence. The next few days turned into a week, and the week into a month. I threw myself into my work, trying not to think about Adeline and the whole nightmare. Ethan and I started looking for a new home for ourselves, as our apartment was a temporary solution. The insurance company paid compensation, but the idea of rebuilding the same house seemed bitter now. I received only rare messages from Adeline, formal, polite, and full of remorse. I responded in the same formal way, not ready for real reconciliation. Only once did I ask about the children, and she replied that they were fine as they could be under the circumstances. And then, after 6 weeks had passed, I received a call from a mutual friend, Tessa Williams, the same one from whom Adeline had learned about our luxurious house. Did you hear? She asked without greeting. About what? Dexter filed for divorce. He took the kids and moved in with his parents in Riverside. I sat down, feeling my legs give out. When? Yesterday. The whole town is talking about it. He accuses her of being crazy, says he's afraid to leave the kids with her. You know, Dexter, he's always been a good actor. Now he pretends to be the perfect father and makes Adeline look like a psychopath. And the kids? How are they? They say Liam was crying, didn't want to leave. Cora is still young, doesn't understand what's going on. But Dexter insisted. He's got a good lawyer, and with Adeline's history of arson, there's no chance of her getting custody. I thanked Tessie for the information and hung up, feeling devastated. Despite all our difficulties, I knew how much Adeline loved her children. Losing them would be the worst punishment she could ever face. In the evening, I told Ethan everything. He listened in silence, then hugged me. Do you want to help her? He asked, not a question. I don't know, I answered honestly. Part of me feels like she's getting what she deserves. But another part of me, she's still my sister Ethan, and I know how much she loves Liam and Cora. What would you like to do? Talk to her, find out how she's doing. Maybe offer to help her get a lawyer to fight for custody. Ethan sighed but nodded. I'll support whatever you decide. The next day, I went to Adeline's house. She was still living in the same rented house, but now knowing she was alone there, it seemed even more somber. The door did not open immediately. When Adeline finally appeared, I barely recognized her. She was thin, pale, and empty-eyed. Her hair, once her pride, was dull and unwashed. Maggie, she said, surprised. She stepped back, letting me in. The house was in disarray, with dirty dishes in the kitchen and things strewn about. I noticed the empty wine bottles and winced. "I heard about Dexter," I said as we sat down in the living room. Adeline nodded, looking past me. "He says I'm dangerous, that I can't be trusted with children, with a woman who sets fire to houses." "Does he have a lawyer?" "The best in town. His parents pay for him. They always wanted to take my grandchildren away from me. They said I was a bad mother. And you? Do you have a lawyer?" She laughed bitterly. "With what money, Maggie? I lost my job. No one wants to hire an arsonist. Dexter took our car. My neighbors stopped talking to me. The realtor said they won't renew my contract at the end of the year. I lost everything." I looked at her and my heart broke with mixed feelings. Anger, for what she had done. Pity, because I saw her suffering. Guilt, because part of me thought that maybe if I had told her about the house earlier, none of this would have happened. "I'll help you find a lawyer," I finally said. "A good one. So you can fight for the children." She looked at me in disbelief. "Why?" "After everything I've done, you must hate me." "I don't hate you, Addie. I don't know what I feel, but you deserve a fair trial, and Liam and Cora deserve to have a mother in their lives." She cried quietly, not hysterically, just tears streaming down her face. "I'm so stupid, Maggie. All my life I have envied you, your confidence, your success. I wanted so badly to prove that I was worth something too. But instead, I just destroyed everything. I destroyed my own future, the future of my children." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her, to tell her that everything would be fine. "We both need time, Addie," I finally said, "to heal, to figure out how to move on." "What if there is no on?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't make her a promise I wasn't sure about. The following weeks turned into months. I kept my promise and helped Adeline find a good family lawyer. We hardly ever communicated in person. Everything was done through attorneys. Ethan supported me, although I could see that he was still angry with Adeline. We bought a new house, smaller than the one that burned down, but cozy. We started a new life. I learned about Adeline from my friends. She was undergoing therapy, as was specified in the conditions of her release. She found a job as a cashier in a supermarket, the only place that agreed to hire her. She fought for the right to see her children, although the court initially allowed only short supervised visits. The town quickly learned the whole story. People were divided. Some sympathized with Adeline, others condemned her. But most simply distanced themselves from her, not wanting to deal with a problem woman. I plunged into work, expanding the bakery chain. I tried not to think about my sister, but I often found myself waking up at night, wondering how she was doing. Is she eating well? Is she drinking again? Does she see her children? And then, one rainy Sunday, the doorbell rang. Ethan and I were watching a movie in the living room. He went to answer it, and I heard a soft whisper in the hallway, and then he came back with a tense face. "It's Adeline," he said. "She wants to talk to you." I froze. We hadn't seen each other face to face in almost 6 months. "Let her in," I finally said. Adeline entered the room, nervously clutching the strap of her bag. She looked better than the last time I saw her. Her hair shiny again, and a flush on her cheeks. "Hi, Maggie," she said quietly. "Hi, Addie," I replied. Ethan mumbled something about unfinished business and walked out, leaving us alone. We sat in silence, not knowing where to begin. "How are you?" I finally asked. "Better," she replied. "Therapy. It helps. It makes you look at some things differently." "That's good." "Yes." She was silent. "I saw the kids yesterday. The court allowed me to spend a weekend with them every 2 weeks, unsupervised." "That's great news," I said sincerely. "Yeah," she smiled faintly. "Liam's gotten so tall, and Cora has learned to read." We fell silent again. I noticed that her hands were shaking. "Maggie," she finally said, looking me in the eye, "I came to ask you for help. I'm being evicted at the end of the month. I've been trying to find another place to live. But with my history and my salary, no one wants to take me. I felt my whole body tense up. This is what I was afraid of, that she would come asking again, and I would have to decide if I could trust her again. I understand if you say no, she added quickly, seeing my reaction. I would say no if I were you. It's just, I don't know where else to turn, and if I'm homeless, the court might cancel my visitation with my kids. I looked at my sister, a woman who had once been my best friend, then a rival, a traitor, and now, who was she now? Could I risk it again? Was I ready to let her back into my life, knowing what she was capable of in a moment of weakness? I need time to think, I said finally. It's not an easy decision, Addie. She nodded, looking down. Of course it is. I understand. As she stood up to leave, I noticed how thin she was under the big sweater, how tired her shoulders were. Once proud and confident, Adeline now seemed like a shadow of her former self. I'll contact you tomorrow, I said, walking her to the door. On the doorstep, she turned around, looking at me with pain and remorse. I know it's probably too late to say this, but I'm really sorry, Maggie. For everything. Not just the house. For all the years of jealousy and resentment. For not appreciating you. I'd give anything to go back and change that. I stood there, unable to answer, feeling something breaking and at the same time rebuilding inside me. Adeline nodded as if she understood my struggle and walked away in the rain, not opening her umbrella, letting the drops mix with the tears on her face. I returned to the living room, where Ethan was waiting for me with a questioning look. She's asking for help, I said, sitting down next to him. She's being evicted. And what are you going to do? He asked cautiously. I looked at him, feeling the weight of this decision. I don't know, Ethan. How can I trust her after everything? But how can I not help my own sister, knowing that her connection to her children depends on it? He took my hand, squeezing it tightly. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. I nodded, grateful for his support, but knowing that this was a decision I had to make on my own. Should I forgive my sister, who betrayed me in a moment of weakness, or protect myself from possible new pain? Should I help her get back on her feet, risking getting burned again, or turn away, knowing that by doing so, I could lose not only her, but also my relationship with my nephews forever? I looked out the window, where the rain poured down, washing away the mud from the streets, and thought about the fire that had destroyed the house, but perhaps given us a chance to build something new from the ashes. After Adeline's visit, I couldn't sleep all night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about my sister, who had turned from a proud, confident woman into a broken shadow. In the morning, I made a decision. Ethan, I said at breakfast, I want to offer her to rent our old apartment. Ethan slowly put down his coffee cup, looking at me carefully. Are you sure that's wise? No, I answered honestly, but we were going to rent it out anyway. At least this way I'll know who lives there. And you'll be able to control the situation, he said. Not control, I protested. Just help her get back on her feet. She's my sister, Ethan. Yes, she did something terrible, but she's also paying a terrible price for it. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture he always did when he was worried. I understand how you feel, Megan. I know. I took his hand. But I can't just leave her out on the street. Especially now, when she's trying to get the kids back. He squeezed my hand back, and I could see him struggling internally, between wanting to protect me and realizing how important this attempt at reconciliation was to me. Okay, he finally said, but with clear conditions. No alcohol in the apartment, regular payments, and if there's ever a problem, thank you. I leaned down and kissed him. I know this is not easy for you. The same day I called Adeline and offered her the apartment. She refused at first, her pride still fighting inside her, but when I explained that it would help her with her child custody case, she reluctantly agreed. I'll pay full market rent, she insisted, as soon as I get a promotion. Okay, I said, not wanting to argue, But in the meantime, we'll set a rent you can afford. As we signed the lease, I noticed how much Adeline had changed. She was quieter, less confident. Her usual sharpness had disappeared, and sometimes I would catch her looking at me, grateful but full of shame. A week later, something unexpected happened. Dexter called me for the first time since we'd met. "Megan," he sounded uncertain, "I need your help." "What's wrong?" I asked, tensing up. "My parents are away for the weekend, and I've been called to work. It's an emergency. I can't refuse. The nanny is sick. I have no one to leave the children with, and I don't have permission to meet Adeline on weekdays." I froze, not believing my ears. "You want me to watch Liam and Cora, if you can." He sounded relieved. "Just for tomorrow and the day after that. I'll pick them up on Friday night." "Sure," I said without even thinking about it. "We have a guest room." When I told Ethan about it, he was surprised at first, but then nodded. "It's good for the kids. They need stability and a family." The next morning, Dexter brought Liam and Cora. 12-year-old Liam, tall and thin as a cane, with his mother's dark hair and serious eyes, stood silently, holding 8-year-old Cora's hand tightly. She, small, with curly brown hair and freckles, looked much more cheerful. "Aunt Maggie!" she exclaimed, rushing to me with hugs as soon as Dexter left. "Your house is so beautiful." "Thank you, sweetheart." I hugged her back, feeling something warm spread through my chest. I led them upstairs to the guest room that Ethan and I had hastily prepared the night before. Liam was still silent, but I noticed his eyes warm when he saw the stack of books on the bedside table. "Are those for me?" he asked, walking over to them. "Of course," I smiled. "I remember you like science fiction." He nodded, picking up the top book and flipping through the pages. "Mom remembers too," he said quietly. "She subscribed to a monthly magazine with science fiction stories for me." Dad said it was a waste of money. I felt my heart clench. Adeline never told me about it. Those 2 days with my nephews changed everything. Watching them, talking to them, I began to see Adeline in a new light. Liam, so serious and responsible, told me how his mom always checked his homework, even when she came home late from work. Cora showed me a friendship bracelet she and Adeline had made together on their special girls' nights. "And my mom is teaching me to cook," Cora said as she helped me make cookies. "She says I'll be a better baker than she ever was." "Your mom baked?" I was surprised. Adeline had always avoided the kitchen as a child. "Of course!" Cora opened her eyes wide. "She makes the best cupcakes in the world, and she always bakes something special for our birthdays." I paused, suddenly realizing how little I knew about my sister's life with her children. What kind of mother she was. I saw only the surface, financial problems, unstable living conditions, but I missed the essence, the love and care she gave her children despite all the difficulties. In the evening, when the children were asleep, Ethan and I sat in the living room, and I shared my thoughts. "I never saw this side of Adeline," I said, twirling my wine glass in my hands. "She always seemed so irresponsible. But to hear the kids talk about her, she's a good mom, Ethan, no matter what." He nodded, staring thoughtfully into the fire. "People are complicated, Megan. They're not all good or all bad, not even your sister. Do you think I should try to reconnect with her? For real?" Ethan sighed, but his eyes were soft. "I think you've already made up your mind. And while I still have my concerns, I also see how important it is to you. And for the kids." When Dexter arrived on Friday night to pick up Liam and Cora, I felt a strange emptiness. They had fit so naturally into our lives over the past 2 days. Before he left, Liam came up to me and gave me an awkward hug, the first show of affection he had ever shown me. "Thank you, Aunt Maggie," he said quietly. Can I come over after school sometimes? You have good books." "Of course, Liam," I replied, feeling something warm gather in the corners of my eyes. And for Cora, too. After they left, I made a decision. The next day, I called Adeline. "Addie, can I see you? I need to talk to you. We met at a small coffee shop in the city center. Neutral territory for both of us. Adeline looked better than the last time I'd seen her. Her hair in a neat ponytail, light makeup, simple but clean clothes. Her eyes were clear, with no traces of alcohol or insomnia. You look good, I said, sitting down across from her. I try, she smiled weakly. Therapy helps. Did you get a job? In a small clothing store on Maple Street? It's nothing special, but the owner, Mrs. Harris, is very nice. That's great, Addie, I said sincerely. She nodded, twirling her cup nervously in her hands. How are the kids? Have you seen them? Yes. I told her about Liam and Cora's visit, about what they said, how much they missed her. They love you very much, Addie, and I can see that you are a wonderful mother. Her eyes filled with tears, and she quickly wiped them away with a napkin. Thank you, she whispered. I try. Even when things go wrong, I try to be good for them. I know. I reached out and touched her fingers lightly. And that's why I want to offer you something. She looked at me questioningly. I talked to Dexter. He agreed that the kids could spend more time with you if you weren't alone. What do you mean? I'm offering to spend this weekend with you and the kids, as a safeguard for Dexter, until the court reevaluates the custody arrangements. Adeline froze, staring at me wide-eyed. You'd do that for me? For you? For Liam and Cora. For all of us, I answered. I want to try to rebuild our family, Addie, if that's what you want too. I do, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. And so began a new phase in our relationship. Every other weekend, Liam and Cora would come to Adeline's house, and I would spend some time with them. At first, it was awkward and tense, but gradually we found a new rhythm. We cooked together, played board games, watched movies. Ethan would sometimes join us, although I could see that he still found it difficult to fully trust Adeline. After a month of these meetings, I invited Adeline to dinner at our place, just the three of us, without the children. It was the first such meeting since the fire, and the tension could have been cut with a knife. Ethan was polite but reserved. Adeline was nervous and too quiet. I tried to keep the conversation going, but I felt it sounded fake. And then, during dessert, Adeline suddenly put down her fork and looked directly at Ethan. I know you hate me, she said calmly, and you have every right to. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed something beautiful that you and Megan created out of love. I can only say that I am deeply sorry and that every day I work to become a better person. Not so that you can forgive me, but so that I can live with myself and be the mother my children deserve. Ethan looked at her for a long time, assessing her. Then he nodded slowly. I don't hate you, Adeline, he finally said. I'm afraid for Megan. I'm afraid that you'll hurt her again. I'm afraid of that, too, Adeline replied quietly. After that, something changed. Not immediately, but gradually, the atmosphere became less tense. Ethan began to join us more often on weekends with the kids. Once he even offered Adeline a ride home after a late shift at the store. She's really changing, he told me that night as we lay in bed. I can see her efforts. Yes, I agreed, relieved. She's trying hard. My own feelings, however, were more complicated. I was happy to see Adeline's progress, to see her reconnect with her children, to see her become more confident at work. But deep inside, there was still fear. Could I really trust her again? Was I falling into the same trap? One evening, when Adeline and I were alone, the kids were already asleep and Ethan was working late. I finally decided to ask her something that had been bothering me for a long time. Addie, can I ask you a personal question? She nodded, putting down the magazine she was flipping through. Sure. Why have you always been so jealous of me? Even as a child, when we were both just kids, you always seemed resentful of me. Adeline was silent for a long time, looking out the window at the dark sky. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but confident. Because you always knew who you were. Even as a little girl, you were whole. You knew what you wanted, how to get there. You were kind and smart, and everyone loved you for that. And I always felt like a shadow. Too noisy, too dramatic, too emotional. I didn't know how to be like you, and being myself seemed insufficient. I listened, amazed. Did my little sister, who had always seemed so confident, so bright, really feel inadequate? So I rebelled, she continued, skipping school, flirting with boys, causing scandals. If I couldn't be good like you, I would be bad. At least it attracted attention. I never thought of you as a shadow, I said, feeling something tighten painfully in my chest. You were always brighter than me, Addie. Braver. I envied your ability to get along with people so easily, your confidence. She smiled bitterly. It wasn't real confidence. It was fear. Fear that if I stopped, everyone would see me for what I really was. A scared little girl who just wanted to be loved. We sat in silence, looking at each other with new eyes. My therapist says that envy is often a disguised fear of loss or inadequacy, Adeline said quietly. I didn't hate you, Maggie. I was afraid I would never be good enough. And the more you succeeded, the stronger that fear became. And now? I asked. She thought before answering. Now I try to just be Adeline. Not to compare myself to you or anyone else, just being the best version of myself that I can be. For myself. For the kids. She looked me in the eyes. And for you, if you'll let me be your sister again. I felt tears filling my eyes. I reached across the table and took her hand. You've always been my sister, Addie. Even when we both forgot it. When Ethan came home, he found us both crying, but smiling, over a bottle of non-alcoholic cider and an old family photo album. He didn't ask any questions, just joined us, and we spent the evening reminiscing about our childhoods, telling stories he didn't know. That evening, as we walked Adeline home, I felt strangely elated and anxious at the same time. Something important had begun to heal, but could we truly repair what had been destroyed? Later, lying in bed with Ethan, I shared my doubts. I want to trust her, I said, looking up at the ceiling, but part of me is still afraid. Ethan turned to me, his face serious in the dim light of the nightlight. Megan, I think we need to talk about the future, about what role Adeline will play in our lives. I tensed up, preparing for him to say that we were moving too fast, that we needed to be more careful. I see how much she's changed, he continued, surprising me. And I see how important it is for you to rebuild this relationship. But we need to set clear boundaries. Like what? I asked cautiously. For example, complete honesty. If she has problems, financial, emotional, whatever, she should talk about it right away, not wait until things blow up. No alcohol when she is with her children, and she must continue therapy. I nodded, feeling the tension slowly leave my body. Those are reasonable boundaries. And one more thing, he added, taking my hand. I want you to promise me that you will be honest with me about your feelings. If you need space from her, or if something is bothering you, tell me. Don't keep it all inside, trying to protect everyone. I leaned against him, feeling deeply grateful for his understanding and support. I promise, I whispered. The next day, we met with Adeline and laid out our terms. I was afraid that her pride would rise up, that she would take it as controlling or distrustful. But she listened carefully and then nodded. It's fair, she said. More than fair. And I'm grateful for this chance. It's not just a chance, Addie, I replied. It's a new beginning, for all of us. As we said goodbye, she suddenly hugged me tightly, for the first time in years. A real, sincere hug. Not a formal gesture. Thank you for not giving up on me, she whispered into my hair, even when I did. I hugged her back, feeling like something long broken was slowly being mended. It would be a long road, with ups and downs, but for the first time in a long time, I felt real hope. That evening, Ethan and I sat in the backyard of our new home, looking up at the stars, just as Adeline and I had long ago on the roof of my parents' house. You know, Ethan said, putting his arm around me, sometimes the strongest buildings rise from the ruins of old ones. Maybe what we're building now, our family, our relationship with your sister, will be stronger because we've been through this trial. I leaned against him, thinking of all the moments that had brought us here, the childhood fights with Adeline, the years of misunderstanding, the fire that could have destroyed our family completely, but instead gave us a chance to build something new. You're right, I said. A new foundation. For all of us. A year, a whole year since the fire. Sometimes it seems like it happened yesterday. The smell of smoke, the charred walls, the shock and pain of betrayal. And sometimes it feels like I'm in another life, with other people. So much has changed in that time. I was standing in the kitchen of our new home, preparing a birthday cake for Liam's birthday. He was turning 13, the official transition from childhood to adolescence, an important event that we decided to celebrate as a family. Our new home was much smaller than the one that burned down. A cozy two-story house in a quiet neighborhood with a small garden and terrace. Ethan and I consciously chose something more modest than we could afford, partly because of a new understanding that the real value is not in square meters, but in the people around you, and partly to save money for other important things. The most important room in our new home was the guest room, spacious, bright, with 2 beds and shelves filled with books and toys. It was the room where Liam and Cora spent every other weekend when they came to visit Adeline and me. It smells incredible! Ethan walked into the kitchen, hugging me from behind. Chocolate? Raspberry, I replied, continuing to whip the cream. Liam said it was his favorite. That's weird, Ethan said thoughtfully. He always seemed to be all about pure chocolate. People change, I smiled, looking around. Ethan nodded, and we both knew we weren't just talking about Liam's tastes. This year had changed all of us deeply, forever. Adeline was the first to arrive, holding a neatly wrapped box, a gift for her son. She looked different. Not just outwardly, although there were changes there too. A healthier complexion, calmer eyes, hair pulled back in a simple but elegant ponytail. But the main difference was in the way she carried herself confident, but without the same nervous energy that always seemed ready to explode. You're home early, I said, hugging her. Dexter hasn't brought the kids yet. I know, she replied, undressing. I wanted to help with the preparations. And to talk to you alone. Something in her tone made me tense. We had achieved a fragile peace over the past year, but deep conversations were still difficult. What's wrong? I asked, leading her into the kitchen. Nothing bad, she quickly assured me as she sat down at the table. I've been offered a promotion at the store. Addie, that's great! I was genuinely happy for her. Yes, she nodded, but her eyes showed hesitation. But there's a catch. Mrs. Harris is opening a branch in Riverside. She wants me to run it. Riverside is a town about 40 kilometers from here. It's where Dexter's parents lived and where he and his kids live now. Are you going to move? I asked quietly, feeling a strange mixture of joy for my sister and fear of losing what we had worked so hard to rebuild this year. I'm thinking about it, she replied. I could see the kids more often. Maybe, in time, I could get joint custody. But she looked up at me, her eyes full of mixed feelings. I don't want to be distant from you. Not now, when we have finally started to be sisters again. I sat down next to her, taking her hand. Addie, 40 kilometers is not the end of the world. We can visit each other. You deserve this opportunity to be closer to your children and to develop professionally. You really think so? She sounded grateful and relieved. Of course, I smiled. Ethan and I are often in Riverside on business. We can come over to your place for dinner, and you're always welcome to stay with us when you come here." She hugged me tightly, a gesture that came naturally to us now, though a year ago it seemed impossible. For everything. "So, will you help me with the salads?" I asked, wiping the treacherous moisture from my eyes. We worked side by side, chopping vegetables and setting the table, and I couldn't help but notice how much more confident Adeline was in the kitchen. Another change this year was the cooking classes she took to cook better for the kids, as she explained. But I suspected it was more than that. Cooking has become a therapy for her, a way to create something beautiful and useful. "How are your financial literacy classes going?" I asked, mentioning another of her initiatives. "I'm graduating next week," she replied proudly. "Now I know what an investment portfolio is and how to plan a budget, and I've opened a savings account for my children for their education." I smiled, remembering how a year ago Adeline could spend her entire salary in a day without thinking about the future. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Ethan went to answer it, and in a moment the living room was filled with joyful voices. Dexter had brought the kids. "Mom!" Aunt Maggie, Cora, now 9 years old, with two pigtails instead of her former ponytail, flew into the kitchen, throwing her arms around both of us. Liam came in behind her, taller, more serious, with barely noticeable traces of acne on his chin. "Thank you for the invitation, Aunt Maggie," he said formally, but I could see his eyes shining with anticipation. "Happy birthday, Liam!" I ruffled his hair lightly, knowing that soon he would be too old for such gestures. He nodded, sniffing. "Is that raspberry pie?" "Your favorite," I confirmed with a wink. Dexter was the last to enter the kitchen, and I had to admit that he had changed too. Gone was the carefree charm that had once masked irresponsibility. Now he looked more serious, more reserved. Involuntarily, I wondered if the loss of Adeline hadn't triggered his own changes. "Thanks for the invitation," he said, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other. "They wanted to come, but my father has back problems." "That's okay," I replied. A year ago, I wouldn't have believed that we would be able to get together, Adeline, Dexter, the kids, Ethan and I, and spend an evening without tension or pain. But here we are, talking, laughing, eating at the same table. Of course, not everything was perfect. I noticed moments of tension between Adeline and Dexter, the caution in Ethan's voice when he spoke to my sister. But underneath this surface layer, I could see something more important: a willingness to try, a desire to create an atmosphere of family warmth for the children. After dinner, Liam opened presents. From Dexter, new headphones that he had wanted for a long time. From Ethan and me, he received an ebook filled with science fiction novels. And finally, from Adeline. Liam carefully unwrapped the package and froze, looking at the contents of the box. "This is..." He held up an old, worn photo album. "Our family album," Adeline explained quietly. "Your grandparents, my parents, and Aunt Megan's parents, they would have wanted you to have it. There are pictures of all generations of our family, and I added some new ones of you and Cora." Liam carefully flipped through the pages, looking at the faces of people he'd never met, but whose blood ran through his veins. I could see how intently he was looking at each photo, trying to discern the connection between the past and the present. "Thank you, Mom," he finally said, looking up. "This is the best gift ever." Later, when the children went to play board games and the adults stayed at the coffee table, I watched my sister. She was sitting next to Dexter, and they were talking quietly about something. Not as ex-lovers or enemies, but as parents who want what's best for their children no matter what. "Who would have thought," Ethan murmured, leaning toward me, "that a year after such a catastrophe, we'd all be sitting here together?" "People are amazing," I replied. When the guests started to leave, I kept Adeline on the terrace. "I have something for you," I said, pulling a small box out of my pocket. "It's more like an offer." Adeline looked at me in surprise, but took the box and opened it. Inside was a key, a regular metal key with a cupcake-shaped keychain. "What is this?" she asked, puzzled. "The key to my new bakery in Riverside," I replied. "We're opening next month. And I need a manager I can trust." Her eyes widened. "You're offering me a job?" "Yes," I nodded. "I know you already have an offer from Mrs. Harris, but I thought, maybe you'd like to try something new." "I was thinking of calling it the Larson Sisters Bakery," I said, feeling my voice tremble. "If you'd be okay with that, of course." Adeline stared at the key in her hand, and I could see. "But I don't know anything about running a bakery," she finally said. "But you do know about running a store, and how to get along with people, and I'll teach you how to bake." I smiled. "Besides, Cora says you make the best cupcakes in the world." Adeline laughed, but her eyes were moist. "Is that what you really want? After everything that's happened, you're ready to trust me with a part of your business?" I took her hands, looking her straight in the eye. "Addie, we've been through hell this year. But you know what I've learned? Sometimes it's only by facing the worst that we can build something real. What's happening between us now, this healing, it's real because we've seen the darkest parts of each other and decided to try again anyway." I don't know if I deserve this, Maggie." "It's not about what we deserve," I replied softly. "It's about what we choose. And I choose to believe in you, to believe in us." She hugged me tightly, and we stood there for a long time, two sisters who had lost and found each other. "I accept your offer," she whispered at last, "and I promise I won't let you down." "I know," I replied, feeling strangely confident. After everyone left, Ethan and I sat in the living room, tired but content. The festive mess around us was a reminder of the pleasant hours we had spent together. "Are you sure about the bakery?" Ethan asked, taking my hand. "I'm sure," I nodded. "Maybe I'm being overly sentimental, but it feels right." You know, our parents always dreamed that Adeline and I would work together one day. Maybe now is the time to try. Ethan smiled, kissing my forehead. "You're an amazing woman, Megan Larson. Your ability to forgive and see the best in people, it's a rare gift." "I don't think it's about forgiveness," I replied thoughtfully. "When you truly understand why a person did what they did, it's not so easy to judge." I thought back to the last year, all those conversations with Adeline, when we finally started talking for real. About our childhood, about our fears and resentments, about how differently we saw the same events, how we learned more about each other than in all the previous years. I remembered how the relationship between Adeline and the children gradually healed, how Liam was initially reserved and distrustful, but eventually began to share his thoughts and dreams with his mother again, how Cora blossomed when she realized she could love both parents without feeling guilty. I remembered how Dexter changed. Perhaps the loss of his family was the shock that made him reassess his life. How he finally found a stable job and became a more responsible father. It's never too late to change if you have a good enough reason. And our house, the house that burned down, was supposed to be a symbol of my desire to help my sister. But maybe the real help was not in material things, but in support, patience, understanding. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked me gently, seeing my thoughtful look. About fire," I answered. "About how it can destroy everything to the ground, but at the same time purify the earth for new life. There are plants whose seeds can germinate only after a forest fire. Maybe it's the same with people sometimes." He nodded, understanding what I meant. "Well, if so, your fire was fruitful. Something valuable grew out of it." I leaned against him, feeling deeply grateful for his wisdom and support. "You know what's strange?" I said. "If it weren't for that fire, Adeline and I might never have had a real conversation. We would have continued to live next door to each other, but without understanding each other. What a paradox. The worst thing I ever did led to the best change." "Life is rarely easy," Ethan said philosophically. "But it's worth it," I concluded, thinking about the future, our new bakery, working together with my sister, weekends with my nephews. about a new beginning that became possible only after everything had burned to the ground. Perhaps this is the wisdom of life, the realization that something beautiful can emerge from the ashes of the worst destruction if we find the courage to start again. Not by avoiding pain, not by denying losses, but by accepting them as part of the path to healing. I was looking at the photo from today's celebration. All of us together, smiling, imperfect, but truly alive. And I thought about the amazing ability of the human heart to burn, to be destroyed, but then to be reborn, stronger and wiser than before, from the ashes.